Hi everyone, the partial prophet here. Thanks for tuning in. I wanted to remind you that we know in part and we prophesy in part, so definitely do your own research, read the Bible for yourself. So what I wanted to do today was I did this video called Trump's 70th week, and I wanted to try to do it in 10 minutes. Do like a 10-minute overview because I know everybody's really busy and this is really important information in this video. Um, and so I'm going to try to just do a quick overview because I know, people are busy. I also know, like a lot of people are just really struggling right now as we suffer through the birth pangs of Messiah. Um, and so I thought I'd give a really quick overview of what's in that video, and then if you have time, you can go back and watch the longer version of this video. And so basically, what I was trying to cover in that video was the 70-week time frame that we find in Scripture. We find it in the book of Daniel, and so what I believe is that we're seeing fulfillment of Scripture through what President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel are doing with kind of this deal of the century and Trump's proclamations about moving the embassy to Jerusalem and um, you know granting the Golan Heights to Israel and things like that. And so I think we're seeing prophecy being fulfilled. And so I kind of went through and covered some of the dates that we see in Daniel comes from Daniel 9 and how it could relate to the actions that we're seeing President Trump do. And so I went through the scriptures too in Daniel and talked about them. And so I talked about how we find, um, in these scriptures, the 70-year time frame, which we know was fulfilled May 14th of last year. I also talked about how in Daniel 9 it talks about do not delay. I thought it was interesting that we hear the do not delay connected to the 70 years. Um, and then we see a 70-week time frame, a 7-week time frame, a 62-week time frame, and another 1-week time frame. And so I discussed about how we could take the verse in Daniel that talks about the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah, that we can consider President Trump making his announcement about moving the embassy to Jerusalem as a fulfillment, a possible fulfillment of this verse, and that we could start counting time from this December 6th date, December 6, 2017, when President Trump made this announcement. And so I also pointed out that the 12-6 could be written out to be 666, and then that was also Kislev 18 on the Hebrew calendar, which 18 is also a 666. And then I talked about, okay, so this is a picture of the embassy, the dedication ceremony, and that happened the 70th year anniversary of Israel becoming a nation. I talked about how we could calculate 62 weeks from December 6th, 2017, and come up with February 13th, 2019. And so that date of this year was when Pence was in Warsaw for this peace and security in the Middle East conference. Very interesting. So that was like a 62-week fulfillment. And then for like the 7 weeks, when I calculated it, I came up with January 24th, 2019. And so that was the date that the White House posted their video of kind of an overview of Vice President Pence's trip to Israel, um, which was just really interesting. Well, one of the things that was really interesting that stood out from that trip was the Palestinians. He was there for 3 days, and in the middle of his trip, the Palestinians had a general strike and closed their stores and stuff like that. To protest because they're protesting. They were protesting President Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. So I definitely think we're seeing fulfillment of prophecy happening on all these different dates. And then for the 7-week time frame, I came up with March 21st of this year was when President Trump said that the U.S. will recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Um, Definitely a very interesting date. And I came up with 7 sevens that could come out of the combination of the Hebrew and the Gregorian dates. And then also, this day was 7 months after Trump was in West Virginia, saying that it was the Palestinians' turn next, in connection to, since he gave Israel a gift by moving the embassy to Jerusalem. He was saying he was gonna do something nice, I guess, for the Palestinians next. And then also, there's a 7-day time frame if you count March 15th to March 21st. So then I got 7 sevens out of that. And then it's also, there's another 62-day time frame, because it was 62 days after the Armenian Christmas Eve in Jerusalem. And then it was also an interesting date because it was 13 months after Billy Graham died. Definitely some interesting stuff. And then for 70 weeks, when you calculate that from December 6th, you come up with April 10th, 2019. Okay, so that was incredible to me to see that, because for the longest time, Trump has been saying that he was going to release his deal of the century after the elections in Israel. Well, the elections in Israel are April 9th. So it's definitely a very important date that we're going to keep an eye on to see what happens. And it's interesting because it talks about 70 weeks have been decreed to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin. And so I don't know if we're going to see like the fullness of the Gentiles, like the fullness of the sin of Donald Trump, because especially if he's going to try to divide the land of Israel. Kushner talked about tearing down borders. He could be like just making a full transgression that is going to get God mad and is going to cause judgment to come on America. And so maybe we're going to see that happening on April 10th. And then, and then it's possible that when President Trump releases his peace deal, that like, that there be a 1-week time frame, and maybe he'll have peace for like 3.5 days, and then there's 3.5 days war in Israel. We already see kind of things happening in Israel that seem like the tensions are just continuing to grow. They're just so not happy with what President Trump is doing. And so Israel's enemies are just really, ramping up their behavior, and just really preparing for war. And so it's possible that, that we'll see more coming to Israel after this 70-week time frame. And then I believe that there's going to be war in Israel, and then there's going to be a war in America. It's possible that Netanyahu could get killed in the war in Israel, and then Jesus will need to come back because there's going to be a judgment on Israel because of Trump's actions, and we're going to need to be saved from that. And so talk all about this in my first video. Um, and okay, so that's my 10-minute time frame. And of course I'm not done. But we'll see if we can wrap it up really quick. Um, and then so I talk about, maybe a 1 week time frame is April 10th to April 16th. Um, like I said, 3.5 days of peace, maybe followed by 3.5 days of war. And so I cover some of the verses that kind of repeat um, some of the same thinking that we see in Daniel. And so I cover some of the verses in Revelation, especially Revelation 11, and then talks about like 3.5 days, the two witnesses and their dead bodies laying in the city for 3.5 days. And then let's see, and then I cover Romans 11 because it's possible that I think it's possible that Prime Minister Netanyahu is being kind of like a false prophet to President Trump, and kind of like singing his praises and causing people in Israel, causing Jewish people to see him as the Messiah. And and in Romans 11 it talks about God giving them a spirit of stupor. And so I talk all about that they might be following this false Messiah. And then I talk about the two Messiah concept, and that how we can see in Scripture, like with the two banquets of Esther, that the the story of the two messiahs are kind of played out. And so like in her first banquet, not much happens, they're just eating and drinking. But in the second banquet, good things happen. Haman gets exposed, Haman's head gets covered, and so we can maybe see the two messiah story being played out in the two banquets of Esther in the Bible. Okay, so I don't think I quite did it in 10 minutes, but I did it as fast as I could. And so thanks for tuning in. Definitely go to the original video, Trump's 70th week, when you have time. I recommend just like maybe listening to it in parts, if you can't, because I know you're busy, but listen to it a little bit at a time, and because it's some very good information in there, and I think you'll learn a lot. And so I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this quick overview. And so we're definitely going to keep an eye on what happens April 10th. And like I said in my original video, it's possible that we could see things just like happening really quick. When God says no more delay, when he decides to do something, it could happen really fast. So be prepared, be ready, but be looking up. Look up for your Messiah. Be excited about the Messiah coming, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and pray for your Jewish brethren who might be facing a war really soon. And thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you later.